What's going on, guys? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the True Strength of Life podcast. I have a legend here. He at least he's a legend. He's a legend in my eyes. How about that?
Says you.
Yeah. So and anybody after this that hears this, they'll think so too. Um, but anyway, Lavoisier. I said your name right, right?
Yes, sir, you did.
Lavoisier.
Yep.
Lavoisier. I mean, I'll let you introduce yourself, but as far as from my knowledge, you're an entrepreneur.
Yes, sir.
A rapper is in there somewhere. At least
Somewhere.
I don't know where you consider yourself now, but
Right.
I think you're a realtor, right?
Yes, I'm a Houston real estate agent for sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you run a media brand.
Yes.
So why don't you go ahead and kind of talk about what you do, especially when it comes to the Grow the Heck Up and all that stuff.
Right. So Grow the Heck Up is a Christian lifestyle brand. It's based on the scripture in Corinthians that says, when I was a child, I spoke as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. And that was fascinating to me because in the West, we have adolescence. In Eastern cultures, they don't have adolescence. You're either like a kid or an adult, right? And so here in America, we give young people so much time, to kind of play. And then when life hits, college hits 18, here's $100,000, right? Like, figure it out and pay it back. So that always was fascinating to me. And I spent a lot of time not learning things that I wish I would have. And so my heart to, inform and learn and grow communally with the beauty of technology and the internet became passionate to me. So that's what Grow the Heck Up is. We've been in operation since, I don't know, maybe informally, probably like 2007, 2008, pretty formally like 2011. That's when the website went up, and I
know it's been a while.
Yeah, it has. And I also noticed that everything Christian entertainment was either music or preaching and ministry. But yet all the Christian people I followed, they were engaged in like football games, like our wives like makeup, like we enjoy the same things that the world does, comic books, movies, but there wasn't really a place to talk about that on a religious platform. It's almost like we got to keep it sacred. And I said, let's just be mature and just talk about anything. So our first couple of articles, we had articles about theology, and then we also had articles on like how to clean your makeup brushes for women, just as a symbol of what we wanted to represent. And and it's been great so far. I'm also a Houston real estate agent as well. And I really enjoy doing it. I'm based in Houston.
Awesome. So before we get into any kind of like deep discussion on anything, why don't you give like a brief version of your testimony, how you started out in life, where you're from, started your journey with God and all that.
Right. Well, I'm so Houston, Texas these days. I forget I'm from Brooklyn. So I'm from Brooklyn.
I remember that Lavoisier.
Right. You remember that guy, right? Been a while. So I've been a rapper since I was young, about 14, 15 years old. Grew up in the hood in Brooklyn. My mom died when I was 4 years old. My dad I knew he existed, but he wasn't around. Popped in my life a couple times, maybe 4 or 5 times, not much that I remember. And, I was a decent kid in school, man. I was pretty smart as a kid, but the streets got a hold of me. Didn't care about school or life, and I just went the way of my neighborhood. My environment really corrupted me and took me under. I was 19 years old. I was hustling in Brooklyn, selling drugs. And a friend of mine who I was chilling with, he was my round partner, I started talking to me about God. And my heart was pierced. We were on this kind of like knowledge-seeking journey, reading like New Age books and all of that. And he just began to talk to me about God. He didn't even really present the gospel to me. His message was just, look, everything we're looking for in all these books and all this information, it's God, bro. It ain't energy. It's not the universe. It's God. Like, it was like that. And my heart was really convicted and pricked, even though I had this like outward defensive posture, like, nah, you're bugging, like,
Yeah.
And so I walked him out, and then I came back into where we were. It was an abandoned apartment on 36th Street and Neptune Avenue in Brooklyn. If anybody wants to pull it up on Google Earth,
Wow.
And it was a dirty burgundy carpet, bro. And I got down on my knees, no preacher, no organ. And I said, yo, God, I don't know who you are. I don't know your name. I don't even know if you're real. But if you're real, I need you to show me something. And it wasn't arrogant. It was sincere. Like I was on this quest for truth. And if it was the truth I wanted to know, I didn't want to miss it. And if it wasn't, I just wanted to settle it and move on with my life. Yeah. And so long story short, I was hustling in Brooklyn, living in Queens. My family had already moved out the projects. And so I would have this 2-hour commute back and forth 2 times a week. And when I went home one day, I just grabbed the Bible. We weren't a real religious family, but I had a couple Bibles laying around. I grabbed the Gideon Bible and I started reading it while I was hustling, while I was selling drugs. And God began to speak to me very personally, very intimately, in a very real way. And slowly but surely, my life changed. My life was changing for real for like 2 years with just me and the Bible. And stopped selling drugs, knew I had to stop smoking cigarettes, like just different things. I knew that God was pricking my heart. And the Bible was just the most fascinating book I'd ever found. And I remember thinking like, either this is the greatest deception that has ever fooled the world because of the way it's hitting me and I'm bugging, or either this is like the greatest thing that everybody's missing out on. And because I'm a Christian today, I think what I decided.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's good. Real quick on that. You said something crazy. How fascinating the Bible is. People think that it's like this whitewashed, like clean, like just nothing super crazy or anything happens in it. Because like I think a lot of that comes from the Christian media kind of stigma that's around right now. Where everything is like G or PG and it, and the shows are just not really good and stuff like that. I think they've made a lot of progress, but but you look at the Bible, like you just read it. It's like it's hardcore stuff.
It really is.
Yeah, and also kind of some funny stuff too. Like just intimate details. Like why in the world does that need to be in there unless it was actually what happened?
Right. Well, I started reading Proverbs and the New Testament. Yeah. And so I had like the words of Jesus and I had the principles of Solomon. And man, that's where I fell in love with wisdom. Because, I was with a bunch of street dudes. We weren't like reading books on our off days, but we just kind of considered ourselves smart street dudes, right?
Yeah.
Like, for instance, one of the dudes I went to school with and I was selling drugs with, he was the chess champion in Madison Square Garden when he was 15.
Yeah.
Of course, he didn't brag about that. One day we're just chilling, smoking weed. So we go off to hang out with these white kids in another neighborhood in Brighton Beach. They break out a chessboard. He just starts smashing everybody in the room.
Wow.
And I'm like, N-word, I ain't never seen you play no chess. Like, what are you doing? Like, where's that come from, right? And he's like, yo, yeah, I was a chess champion at Madison Square Garden. I was 15. I'm like, what? Like, yo, that's great. So, so we considered ourselves to be smart and street. And when I started to read the Bible, and so many things in my life the Bible was calling stupid, that was hard. A fool hates correction, and it just was rocking me. And it caused me to reevaluate who I was, like totally, not just my behavior, right? Like my identity. It didn't speak to my race, my gender. It spoke to my humanity. Yeah. And I'd never encountered anything like it before.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a deep appreciation for Proverbs. I have over 200 episodes on my podcast of doing what I call daily words of wisdom, where I did just a couple minute episode of a verse or a short passage in Proverbs and just talked about it, just for a couple minutes, almost every day. Yeah, that I think it was like 260 episodes, something like that. But
wow, that's a lot though.
That's a lot. But what happened was, not that I remember a ton of them off the top of my head, but you can just sense like you can sense you're being guided in general towards just a better way of viewing things and living and being able to kind of see through a lot of what's going on. And
it's so practical. It blew my mind. I'm like, this is the Bible. It's everyday wisdom. It's, and I was blown away, especially like not having a father. I don't know if I looked at it in that way, but in a sense, as I look back, I imagine that I felt myself being fathered, right? The lessons that you're supposed to learn in your home. And a lot of people with fathers don't learn these things, but I felt this comforting empowerment. And then it would esteem knowledge, wisdom, and understanding so highly. And then I'm not sure if you're familiar with the the nations of the gods and the earth. Like a lot of people in Wu-Tang, Busta Rhymes, a lot of them are, 5% nation. They speak about gods and god bodies. And so my brother who was killed was a 5%er. So in his rhymes, when I was a kid, I would hear all of this language that you might hear from Wu-Tang and all that, but for them. And so now, coming from Brooklyn, New York, where this religion is very heavy in urban centers across America, every other page, it's almost like God prepared me to receive it. Right, because my brother was from another religion and all this kind of stuff, and he was murdered. But I cracked this Bible, and every other page is like knowledge, wisdom, understanding, knowledge, wisdom, understanding. And I'm like, this is the real one. Like, yo, they got the carbon copy, like they got the fake. You know what I'm saying? And I was just so enamored and impressed with the Bible, man. And that began my journey.
Yeah. Yeah, and a big part of it too from the Bible perspective is I know that the Bible has been used in evil ways to perpetuate slavery and stuff like that. I understand that, but that doesn't mean that it's actually what it's saying.
Indeed.
So my point is that the Bible, a lot of what those guys that you're talking about were into, when you get down to it, a lot of those writings and stuff, they always seem to push one group of people and put down others. Where the Bible's, yes, it's mostly about Israelites, but at the same time, come New Testament, it's everybody.
Right.
It doesn't discriminate to color, to tribe, to nothing. It's everybody.
Right. And context matters, because two sides of that coin are, one side is that the Bible says that God preserved the Jews in order to save the rest of the world. And the other side of it is the most special thing about the Jews is that they weren't special. Like, repeatedly in the Old Testament, I started to see God as like, oh, don't think I'm choosing you because you're righteous. You're filthy. You're stiff-necked. You're hard-headed, right? Like, this is my sovereignty. This is my sovereign choice. It has not, even being chosen by God is not what we think it is. And so, he chose them. He said, I chose you because you were nothing, because you were small and little and few. And so kind of changes the narrative of when you think, ooh, the chosen people. The chosen people were the worst and the smallest and the weakest. And so even that speaks to God's character and nature for me.
Yeah, I mean, if he was picking, the top-notch, people in the earthly eyes, why would it not be the Egyptians?
Right, indeed.
From back in the day, like that. Why would he pick the slaves to the most powerful people?
There we go. And even that, something I think is worth touching on for anyone who listens and kind of feels like the Bible justifies slavery. Again, in the Bible Museum, they have a copy of a slave Bible. And the Bible that they used to read to the slaves, so many stories are taken out. The Egyptian story of emancipation is taken out. And so, no, they weren't giving them the Bible. And then slaves were killed for trying to learn how to read. And white people were jailed, fined, and beaten for teaching slaves to learn how to read. You can't become a Christian if you don't know what the text says. Right? And if the Bible co-signed what they were doing, why would they need to change it and rip pages out? You can't have that both ways. They had to distort it because it didn't justify what they were doing. You got passages in Deuteronomy like, whoever steals and kidnaps a man should be put to death. You can't very well, preach that and teach that to a group of African slaves. So the Bible takes care of a lot of concerns once you start to read it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. All right, so I want to see how we're gonna start going down this talk.
Dun, dun.
You're very open in a lot of your posts. The videos you put out. I don't know how your exact, if you want to say platform of Grow the Heck Up. You would say that you're conservative media, but I know that you are.
Right. I would say we're a platform where we discuss race, religion, music, culture, health, community, hip hop, and the Bible. That's our tagline. But I do happen to, at this point in my life, consider myself a constitutional conservative, or even a conservative libertarian in a sense. But yeah, for sure.
Okay. I think at the end of the day, we would probably agree on a lot of that. So, well, okay. And for the audio people, in case it, hasn't been clear yet, you're a black guy.
Oh yeah. I'm a black guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
straight from the projects. I got a Harvard education from the library. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're only listening to mainstream media and different sources like that, you apparently don't exist.
Right, for sure. Or that I'm some kind of sellout. I can't be real. I'm not in touch with black folks. All type of things that people would say until we are face to face and the ideas have to match up, and then we see what's what.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you could talk about that a little bit, like has that something? When did you start thinking about politics in general, and kind of shaping like that was something you were interested in, and
Okay.
kind of took a deeper dive into it,
Right.
and how much of it was from the very beginning, you just had a free thinking approach to it where you
Right.
put all your ideas together, or were you heavily influenced one way or the other in that process?
Well, two of the biggest influences of my life, of course, like I said, are the Book of Proverbs, but also a preacher. My favorite teacher, he's going on to be with the Lord, is Chuck Missler. And he was, and still to this day, I can't think of another teacher that's ever taught this way. When I would listen to him, and he was so like high-minded. When I first started listening to this preacher, he used to talk about the theory of relativity and Einstein, and I was like, what? Like I wasn't used to that in preaching, and so I would have to stop the tapes or the CDs or the MP3s, rewind it and really listen again, because that's how scientific it was. But he would, expound on these deep theories of the Bible and scripture. And then he would say, well, there are a couple of good scholars who don't happen to agree with me. They think X, Y, Z. And I don't happen to agree with them, but I just want you to know they're out there. And it introduced me to this concept of not being afraid of other people's process, ideas, and interpretation. And so it kind of shaped me to be open-minded in that way. And in the Bible, Proverbs, man, the fairness and the justice and all about weighing things out and the scales. I just became fascinated with that concept. False scales are an abomination to the Lord, and just weights are his delight. Proverbs 11:1. So I say that to say I started discussing race and politics online 2008. We all remember what happened in 2008. America elected the first black president.
Yep.
And so for me, I always saw a difference in the way Barack Obama was treated. And I was like, well, listen, let's just put it all on the scale. I said, who do you think is a worse human being? George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, or Barack Obama? Because we got a list of their sins. We got the things people are saying he's doing now. So it wasn't just, of course, as a young black man, especially, I was invested in protecting what Obama represented, but it was also a condition of fairness. I'm like, okay, well, we have these men who owned slaves, raped people, did all kind of things, didn't believe in God, blasphemed the Bible, and they're on the walls of our schools. Sometimes the churches, if they get super political. So are we putting these two groups of people on the same scales, is what I'm saying. Because God's morality hasn't changed. And so it was less about Obama and more about, are we sizing up things comparatively? And that began my journey in the online world of discussing race and debating online and figuring out what I believe and learning about political history. And I was not a conservative. I probably was a liberal and didn't know it, because I didn't know what a liberal or conservative was.
Yeah.
And again, yeah, I think my understanding was limited, but I always made a commitment to say, I'm going to follow the truth wherever it takes me. I used to show this. I'm married twice. I'm married now. And I was married before. I would get into debates or arguments with my wife about life, and we'd be going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And sometimes when I believed she was right, I would change my mind so fast she used to think I was like pretending or patronizing her. So we're going back and forth, and then she would make a point, and I'm like, okay, you got it. You're right. You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
I can't argue. And she would kind of be like, are you kidding? Are you patronizing me? And I'm saying that to say, like, if you show me something that resonates with me as true, in this moment, I'm going to agree on the moment. I don't care what I've said for 10 years. If you show me the truth, I have a commitment to follow it wherever it leads me. And yeah.
I see that right there. That right there, I think is huge. That is such an amazing mindset to have.
Praise God.
Because nowadays, nowadays it's for young people, especially,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like I'm 29, so younger than me, you know, especially
Mm-hmm.
in that generation. Not only are we not that, has it turned from not being concerned about, you know, whether or not my view is not true or what is truth. They're
Mm-hmm.
not concerned with truth. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're not consumed. They don't care. Truth doesn't, you know, what is truth?
Right.
It doesn't exist. You know what I mean?
Is it like about being right or defending your position or something like that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which, you know, is interesting to me because it only takes a basics in things like philosophy to kind of prove them wrong. But
Mm-hmm.
they you know, they're so ingrained with a relative mindset,
Mm-hmm.
that it's honestly poison.
Yeah,
Um,
I'd agree.
you know, because again, for them to say that there is no truth, they're making an absolute truth claim.
Right. That is an absolute statement. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but anyway, I don't know what that was. A little tangent, but
Yeah. Right. I'm with you though.
yeah, yeah. So, all right, let's kind of go into a little bit of because I want to get your thoughts from a Christian, a
Mm-hmm.
black man, a conservative
Mm-hmm.
on recent events.
Sure. Well, let me just say, my path to conservatism was in part brought about by a bias that I realized I had.
Okay.
I post people on Grow the Heck Up that people say I shouldn't. George Carlin hates religion, hates Christianity, makes great points about banking and big business sometimes.
Yeah.
So I'll post it. You know, a rapper who I've even taken stands against in my music. If they make a good point, I'm like, wow, that's a good point. Like, I can't deny that. I still tend to think Bill O'Reilly's a racist, but I guess that's debatable for some. But I remember one time I watched him argue with Russell Simmons about the detriments of hip hop on young black fatherless kids. And I'm sitting there believing Bill O'Reilly's a racist, but agreeing with him. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I agree with this guy. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And just as an example of like how I'm wired. And I posted the video and I let everybody know on Grow the Heck Up in the caption, like, I agree with Bill O'Reilly on this. What Russell Simmons is saying is trash. I'm not going to agree with him just because he's black in hip hop.
Yeah.
And the point of that was I had a penchant for like, if it resonates as true and if it's a worthwhile discussion, we will post it. Because my hope is that if I can acknowledge the validity of something an atheist says, if I can acknowledge the validity of something a Muslim says, or you know, somebody who's not of my worldview, then hopefully it will lend credibility when I testify to something that Jesus has said. And you'll know that I'm not just biased, unable to acknowledge truth. So if I can acknowledge truths outside of my worldview, if Christianity is outside of yours, hopefully you can see the validity in what I said. So that's the philosophy. And so my philosophy, I'll post everybody. I'll post everybody. But I realized I wasn't posting anything Republican or conservative at some point. I realized, like, you know what? I give all ideas a fair shake, but I'm not really giving what people say is conservative a fair shake. And you know, you meet people who like what I do and they say you should check out this guy. And I started listening to conservative people, especially Ben Shapiro. My goodness, his mind is so sharp. The way he debates is just undeniable. And I realized one day, because I started to agree with so much of what he said, but then when I realized that he would say something I would disagree with him about on race, and I would kind of like disregard him. Now I'm not posting him at all.
Yeah.
And then I got convicted. I'm like, well, I post the atheist, right? Like,
Yeah.
And I realized I had a bias. And when I started listening to what, not just talking heads, but like what conservatism and libertarian philosophy actually is, I already agreed with like 90% of it.
Mm.
I'm like, well, I'm against that. Okay, well, I'm for that. Okay, well, limited government. I agree with that. Second Amendment. Oh yeah, and I'm like, this is conservatism? Oh, it's not so bad. And then I met two of my favorite people in the world from California, a black man married to a Messianic Jew. And they found me online talking, and he kind of took me under their wing, and he said, "You're a conservative, brother." I said, "Yeah, I don't know about all of that." And he said something that stuck with me like a movie. He said, "You're a conservative, brother. You just don't know it yet." And I hung up the phone like, nah. But the more I started to understand what conservatism purported to be, I was like, oh yeah, like I can bang with that. Like there's enough, it checks enough boxes on my worldview to be able to say I'm a conservative. So yeah, that was part of that was my journey to conservatism.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Before we dive into any other, political based stuff, mm-hmm. I want to give you a time to first, I guess, put out a disclaimer to however you're going to say this in your own words, but to how your Christian worldview is the main thing that you look at everything else. It just happens to be that in your mind, conservatism fits in that pretty well.
Right. So yeah, that's very good, because I feel like there's no identity that, like, Christianity for me is higher than anything else. Like race, social philosophy, none of that is anywhere in the stratosphere of my identity as a Christian.
Yeah.
To me, it's almost like a description. Like somebody would say, "Oh, I'm post-trib or preacher." Like it just describes a box of my approach to what I would say is my approach to social issues in this pluralistic society. If I was building a society from scratch, the Constitution wouldn't be sufficient. If I was building a society from scratch, I wouldn't say I was a conservative, right? But like, given the framework of the society we have, I've become, I guess, what you would call satisfied with what conservatism represents as an ideal. And let me also be clear that conservative is a philosophy. It's not a political party. I'm not a Republican.
Yeah, same here.
Right. So the Republican Party is a party. You can be a conservative and never vote. Just like Bernie Sanders is not really a Democrat. If he could start his own party, he would start something new. But we only have a binary system. So yeah, most conservatives end up voting Republican. Yeah, most liberals and socialists end up voting Democrat. But there's a distinction there.
Yep.
Liberalism and conservatism are ideologies. Republican and Democrat are parties. And that is a worthwhile distinction to make.
Yeah. I heard Mike Pence say one time in an interview, I think it was Candace Owens interviewing him. I think it was Candace. He said, I'm a Christian first, then I'm a conservative,
and then I'm a Republican.
Then I'm a Republican.
He's been saying that since he ever first got on the campaign trail with Trump.
Yeah. So it's important because, the people that are going to sit there and maturely listen to you, they're going to understand that. They're going to get that. Like, they're going to be able to separate the things. Because there is a difference. And that's what I kind of, in one of my episodes with my friend Marcus, where we took the time and we recorded an episode while we were both on separate computers taking that I side with test.
I remember that.
And so we're going through it, and I remember stopping a couple times when we were disagreeing or we were talking about a very controversial subject or whatever. And I would stop and I'd say, like, people, when you're listening, like, let's just be mature here. Like, let's, don't take, like, one thing I said was, they asked, do you agree with building a border wall? I said, yes. I said, now, people, don't take that as I hate Mexican people.
Okay. Walls are biblical, but okay.
Yeah. So
that's my little joke. But right.
Right. So, but you get what I'm saying. So that, I just want to say all that stuff as we keep going.
Right. You don't want people to be triggered and kind of tune out.
Yeah.
Based on an idea of what they might have about a label or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm a Christian first and foremost. Like, first and foremost, above all, no comparison with my race or my gender. Christianity and being a Christian is what I call my highest identity, my supreme identity. Yeah. And I reject anything in any camp that doesn't line up with my Christian values first and foremost.
Cool. What would you say to somebody who says, you post a lot of political stuff, you post a lot of controversial stuff, but you're a Christian. Don't you think this hurts your witness? What would you say to that?
I would say that my first witness, and I always talk about the validity of what you post online, how it's an extension of yourself. It's going to be around for years. So the internet is forever. But the first thing I would say is my witness with the people in my life is good. I have a church. I'm involved in ministry. I do public things. I have strong relationships with people from different backgrounds, different races, different walks of life. Grow the Heck Up is 10 people. 2 of them are Black. 1 is Mexican. 1's from El Salvador. 1 is Native. 2 are white and Mexican. 1 is Mexican and Puerto Rican. My life is diverse. We don't all have to agree. So that's another part of Grow the Heck Up as well. If you go to Grow the Heck Up's Instagram, very often on the post, you'll see me inviting people like, hey, what's up? Let's discuss live. Hey, what's up? Let's discuss live.
Yeah, you do that a lot.
Right, because the comments doesn't do weighty arguments justice. I'm not arguing about systematic theology in the comments, bro. Like, this is heavy. Like, and it's so strange that in this day and age when we're called to quote unquote love, I'm cool with disagreement, but you don't have to assume the worst of someone because people have logical reasons why they come to the conclusions that they come to. Some are just hateful and callous. Some have thought through it. And so, you know, just as a student, as a person who's always learning, I would say I don't post things to be controversial. I'm just seeking dialogue and discussion. And you really can't find an issue today that hasn't really been politicized. Whether you're talking about school, education, parenting, marriage, like everything is a political issue. And so it's kind of hard not to be controversial to someone. Because the internet lends itself to that being so anonymous that anybody can come and slander you and say anything about you. So what I can say is, of course, I believe I'm right about what I say, or else I wouldn't say it, but I'm accountable to it. And anybody who asks me why I believe what I believe, I'm always willing to give an account and discuss with a brother or sister, whether in my inbox publicly or on a live discussion.
I think that's part of, you know, the challenge of to people be a mature viewer. So in other words, like, for all of the millions of people who are just posting crazy dumb stuff out there on the internet, there are guys like you who yes, you tend to, you know, follow along, we'll say, a conservative mindset. You're obviously a Christian. You talk about these things, but again, like you said, you have reasons for why you got there, and they're very valid reasons.
Right.
And so that's where, like, personally, I'll just give you a little personal story for me.
Sure.
I've grown up. I was homeschooled all the way up until 11th grade. Went part-time to a private school that was mostly white. Grown up in a Christian household my whole life. Mostly white churches my whole life. Still currently, that's the whole situation.
Right. Where are you from? Where do you reside?
In New Jersey, South Jersey.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Was actually born and raised in Maine.
Got you.
And I moved here when I was 8.
Cool.
So, but anyway, I'm you know, laying the groundwork for, to me, my story in that sense, I guess kind of sounds a little bit typical. I was, you know, again, mostly white people, just because that's just was what I existed around. And everybody, I won't say everybody, but most people were Republican or conservative minded. Most people are Christians. So where I've found my, and I'll even take it one step further, because this is something, you know, I'm just into a lot. I'm a young earther. You know, I believe in a young earth. So all these things are like what I would even say like typical, you know, white American Christian stuff.
Right.
But I had to realize, I realized at one point, like, okay, this is what I've grown up in. This is what I've naturally just gravitated towards. But what do I actually think of it? You know,
for yourself.
Yeah. So where do I actually fall on these things? And then what was interesting to me is, as I dove in a little bit more and started coming up with reasons why and all, I basically, with a modified version of each one, but I basically ended up the same way.
Right, which is good. You know, you did your due diligence, made sure you weren't just agreeing just to agree. And you're like, oh, okay, I'm cool now.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, you can ask people around me, you know, even though I'm you know, I'm a white guy that's conservative, I still, the people around me who you know, I'm around a lot of guys who like just watch Fox News and like listen to Fox News radio. Like that's where they get all their stuff that's going on.
Right.
So I like to them, I'm their guy that's like that tells them the other side.
Wow, interesting. Right. Right.
So you know what I mean? So I'm like I'm still that minded person, conservative minded, but I do think I have a good grasp of what the other side is thinking. I'm air quoting other side.
Right. Right.
But same way, I just was telling you that to say, like, you know, it where I started is pretty similar to where I landed.
Right. Right. Which is great, because being a first generation Christian, I'm cool with my kids doing that, right? Like hopefully my kids grow up, ask questions, and then come back around to what I taught them. So, you know, it's great to investigate for yourself, but that doesn't take anything away from the truth. Some of us were taught the truth. Some of us discovered the truth later in life, brother.
And you know what? To be honest, it only happened within the past like year or so as I thought more about it. Because I went through a period of time where just to myself, like I didn't want to talk much about my story because I felt like it was almost like too cookie cutter, too good. You know what I mean? But then I started learning like that is what should be out there. So, you know, like it's again, like you just said, that's how I want my kids to be raised. That's how I am raised. That's how I am raising my kids.
Right. Hopefully my kid's testimony will be God kept me. Yeah. Right. Like I was tempted, but God preserved me. Like whatever God does is worthy of glory. Yep. Doesn't have to be gritty and grimy. Jesus' story didn't get gritty and grimy to the end. You know, he grew up a good little Jewish kid in Jerusalem, man. You know what I'm saying? So it was good enough for him. Hey.
Yeah. All right, so I probably feel like I veered off a little bit, but
no, we're good, bro.
Oh yeah, so we didn't really get too much into, so let's start this now. Current events.
Yes, sir.
So where I have that mindset where I'm much more of I like to see the facts and I like to get details before I just blurt out there an emotional response to everything. And so with recent events, and I'm also somebody who looks at things case by case.
Right.
I really don't like the idea of lumping everything in as one pile and just, you know, presenting it all the same. Because you're dealing with different people with different backgrounds from different areas,
different circumstances,
and exactly
different cultures. Even the culture of policing, when something happens in when something happens in law enforcement, yes, I am interested in what kind of neighborhood it was. Like that matters, right? Like what was the disposition of the police officer, whether right or wrong? Was it a high crime neighborhood where he had to be on alert, or was he pulling somebody over in the suburbs where nothing really happens, right? Like details matter. The particulars matter for sure.
Yep. In Bizzle's new album he dropped, I know he has a line that pretty good just sums up the whole way that I think about this stuff, where he said if all you ever hear of is somebody's a racist, you're going to think of everything they do racially.
Right.
So that is what I'm afraid of is somewhat, I'm not going to say it's the whole case, but somewhat on a big level is happening to a lot of Black Americans with what they're just being surrounded by. My concern is that there's a lot of fear within them that is being just pushed there and instilled in them that isn't necessarily true with reality.
Here's an interesting thing about that.
Now, I want you to speak on that, because you like if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong.
No, I was just a sentence, and I want you to keep talking. As much truth as that has, to whatever degree, they're not alone, right? Like white liberals and the establishment progressive Black community, not everybody in the community is progressive, are saying the same things. So it's not just Black people saying it about themselves. You see the quote unquote liberals like, oh my God, like you can't go outside, you can't go for a jog, like you can't, like, so it's not just Black people believing this alone. And this is the thing, even with you clarified it by saying typical white Christian, quote unquote, because growing up in New York, the typical white culture is liberal, right? Like we got like the Village where everything is super like pro LGBT, and so it's like there are so many typicals in America because there are so many tiers and races and ethnicities and demographics, and so. But yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I think there's one thing I've learned, and maybe again it was from a guidance of reading Proverbs and just wisdom literature. I don't know exactly, but one thing that I've learned and I've kind of grown into is the way that I approach things a lot of times is I take a step back and I take like what I call the 30,000 foot view of things. I try to think of as best I can in that moment, like think of the whole case scenario. What could be the whole thing happening right now? And I realize that in some things you do have to dive down and get specific. But I think far too often people are not taking a step back to see everything that's happening. And unfortunately, I think that is what is hurting a lot of America right now is everybody is jumping on, one thing, then one thing, then one thing, and not realizing that there's this whole thing happening. Not realizing that there's been, 60 million abortions in the last 50 years. But, when there's 100, unarmed black men killed every year, we destroy cities.
By the way, in 2019, it was only 9.
Yeah. So see,
some could argue that those statistics are skewed because police don't keep accurate records all the time. But it was nowhere near as much as I thought. Let me speak to that for a minute because that's part of the reason why conservative philosophy appealed to me and why, for lack of a better term, I just got to talk how I talk. Liberal philosophy is trash. And I joke like that. I say both parties are trash. Both ideologies are not. Here's why. So I'm a pro 2A person, Second Amendment. They always say the Second Amendment protects the First Amendment. To me,
you have a bar about that.
Yeah, right, for sure.
I wrote that. It's in my notes.
First Amendment, right?
Yeah.
And so I'll just give you one example, and for the audience, right? Okay, let's just say Trump is Orange Hitler, right? How are the people that are telling me that Trump is Orange Hitler telling me that the solution is to give up my guns? That doesn't resonate with what Malcolm X said. Martin Luther King, as nonviolent as he was on his way to registering to getting a gun permit. Marcus Garvey, the history of Black Americans, the history, not the modern day Sean King, Angela Rye folks, is rooted in self-defense. Okay, that's cool. So now it's like the philosophy of conservatism to me is one of the best hedges against racism, regardless of what degree, to which degree you believe it exists. Right? Because growing up, you hear certain talking points like, okay, the majority of people on welfare are white. That's true. Okay, demographics, ratios are matter. Yeah. But then you start to discover that 60%, more than half of all women on welfare of all races were teen mothers. Wow. So maybe there's some type of connection with family and poverty. Okay, well, the conservative traditional ideology of family seems to be a hedge against poverty. Then you learn from people like Jason Riley that the black poverty rate for married couples has been in the single digits for 20 years. Oh, wow. There's some connection between marriage and wealth, right? And so that's why I want to always like to emphasize it's really not about the party. It's about the philosophy. So even if I agree that racism was as prevalent as many people or as some people say it is, I still believe a conservative worldview and philosophy is the best hedge against it. Traditional family, strong communities, personal responsibility, all of that type of stuff. And when I was in the projects preaching and doing ministry for the past 20 years with no concept of liberal or conservative, that's what I was telling them. Personal responsibility. You can do it. Don't wait on anyone. All of this kind of stuff. And also for the labels. I didn't know. That's why in the beginning I said I probably was a liberal but didn't know it, because there are a lot of people who don't wear the label but stand by most of what liberal ideology is. So I just try to look at it case by case, like you said, point by point, and let the ideas stack up against each other and see which ones hold the most weight. And also a lot of politicians, like you know, who may espouse liberalism and progressivism, they don't necessarily live like that. I don't really think that the politicians who are liberal and progressives are out here having abortions every week, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. I don't think they're out here with, like, even though they're going to tell the black community it's okay that your kids don't have fathers, it's okay that you're having kids out of wedlock or whatever else, they're not living like that. So they're living way more conservative than the ideology that they're preaching, right? I find that if you follow, this is just my personal opinion as an individual, I found that if you live out the liberal progressive ideology, I find that it would be more destructive to your life. The fluidity of morality, the fluidity of gender, what could be right. Hey, you can't say what's a family. It could be a man or a woman. Whereas the conservative ideology, traditional family, personal responsibility, even without God, the outworking of those two ideologies seem to have very different outcomes to me. And that's part of why I'm comfortable in the camp.
Yeah. I mean, it's you know, commitment is a big part of it. Because, you know, again, in a lot of liberal ideology, like you said, you have a lot of fluidity. You have a lot of basically it's just feeling whatever you're feeling in that moment. You could, sure, you know, have at it.
Right.
So, you know, like one of the struggles, I know that maybe in my mindset, I go a little bit too far with it to where it can be detrimental to me. I'm very much not a feelings-based guy. So where I say that could be detrimental is it might hinder my ability to empathize with somebody. It might.
I can understand that for sure.
It might hinder my ability to you know, to sympathize and just sit there and, you know, for a moment, for a time, like just be sad with somebody.
Right.
Because
mourn with those who mourn.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like, cause I'm just generally not somebody who gets sad. I just don't do that. You know, and, you know, and I have one thing that I do, I'm not gonna say I'm perfect with it, but when I feel something strong like anger or something coming on, or sadness coming on, most of the time my mentality goes to a reasoning. It reasons me out of that emotion.
Wow, interesting.
So I'm not saying emotions are terrible, but I do think that they're a terrible leader.
Right. There you go. Emotions are great. God gave us to them. Very unwise to be led around by them.
And I mean, that's why we see things like the heart is deceitful.
Right. For sure.
That's why we see things like why there is so much wisdom literature in Scripture. You know, because it you know, serve God with all of our mind, serve God with our mentality, like. And I'm drawing a blank on the passage, but like New Testament, you know, get our mind right. Like there's passages like that. So what does all that mean? That means that, you know, I think that means that we should be able to use wisdom, use our thinking, use our reasoning, to be more of a leader throughout our life and throughout making decisions, throughout approaching things and having conversations and giving advice to people, than just seeing what we're feeling in the moment.
Right. Well, you know, sometimes like I laugh because I'm definitely a more information-based person. I have tons of feelings, but even when I'm in my feelings, my principles tell me that it's bad to be led around by your feelings.
Yeah.
Some people really have a principle to say that, you know, just let it out. Whatever you're feeling, go with what you feel. I think that's unhealthy. So even in how much I let my feelings govern me is part of a more principled idea. And you can really get it twisted with who cares about whom. Because there are a lot of progressive liberal ideologies that seem like they are compassionate. Personally, I think some of the compassion is misplaced.
Yeah.
Do you care about single mothers? I'm like, well, yeah. So, okay, for instance, the Brookings Institute, which is a liberal left-leaning organization, it's not a conservative organization, They say there are 3 things that teens of all races and colors across America need to know to get out of poverty. 1, finish high school. 2, find full-time employment. 3, don't have children before you're married or 25 or something like that. And so if I advocate for these things, there's a philosophy that says, oh, well, you're judging these people.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I'm looking at the data that says that I'm sure down to go to the soup kitchen and help you out. I'm down to serve you where you are. But I also want to have the discussion about why this is perpetuated and how we can hedge it off later down the line. And so sometimes, there's a popular phrase. I forget which president said it first. I think it was George Bush. I forget which Bush. I'm not a Bush supporter just because I'm quoting him. I always heard this and it struck me, to not give into the soft bigotry of low expectations. And sometimes I feel like as a Black person coming from the project, there are a lot of people who have had misplaced compassion on me because they didn't really think I had the ability to do any better. The conservative expectation has a more realistic expectation of human nature to me, but also a more realistic of human ability of what humans can be and can do without the help of government. And so yeah, I think that we should be careful about who really cares based on, a certain position that you have. Because I think that, especially as a man, not having a father, that need for challenge, in addition to encouragement and compassion, to me is very important. And so I've come to see, like a quick story, I was walking into, my wife and I have 5 kids together. I have 2, she has 3. They're all our kids. And so one day I'm walking into a business meeting, got my little man with me, her son. He's about 7 years old at the time. And I use big words with my kids all the time on purpose so they can ask me what it means, right? It's a way of strengthening their vocabulary. We're walking into an office building, old, green-eyed, white-haired guy, overhears me say something to my son, my wife's son. And I use a word. And before he could say anything, the guy holds the door for us. He had the most gentle look on his face, but he said, oh, he doesn't know what that means. He's not going to know what that means. And I'm like, how do you know my kid is not Elon Musk? What are you talking about? Like he thought he was being compassionate. He didn't have a racist, offensive look on his face. But to me, that was offensive because you're making an assumption. It may not be because we're Black. Maybe it's because he's young, whatever it is. That wasn't compassion to me, right? And so I think that people can really get it twisted about what compassion really looks like. And I think that when people are data-driven and data-based, they get this reputation of not caring when I just haven't come to believe that that's the case.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, I agree. And I mean, that could go into a whole nother discussion I've had recently, plus just thinking about it, because I have a 2.5-year-old and a 3-month-old. And the way that this is just a little tangent, but the way that, but it kind of goes along with, I like your example of saying you use big words around your son. Probably not something I'm going to do because I don't know many big words myself, but,
hey, listen, all your words are bigger than his.
It's true. So my thing though is I think that as like a Western culture society, especially in America, we've dumbed down children's media like so much.
Tremendously.
It's just so honestly stupid sometimes.
It's mindless. It's mindless.
Exactly. That's the word I've used and I was drawing a blank, but it's just mindless. And it's not. Yes, it can teach them like A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3. It can teach them that, but like it's just everything about it is just mindless.
Compounded with the fact that it's so agenda driven. Yeah. And all the stuff they're sneaking into it and all this kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, bro, that's a whole nother thing.
That's a whole nother, it's a whole nother podcast. I got you.
I drive my wife crazy with that because I pick up on things like that.
I can't watch TV with the family in peace, bro.
Yo, listen, that could be a whole other thing too.
Every time I'm like, pause. You see that?
Yes.
I'm like, all right, just let it play. I'm like, all right, my bad.
So I'm not the only one.
Nah, it's not just you, bro.
She hates it. If we're not watching like The Office, which is our go-to, she doesn't like watching TV with me because right. I've even done it with The Office though, like just stopping it and be like, hey, look, this is what's actually going on right here. Did you see that? Did you see that in the background? You know, like this is
I can't put the blinders back on. I just see it.
I can't either. And one thing that honestly has started to worry me to where like I'm thinking we're gonna have to do something about it is Disney is my daughter's around Disney everything right now. Shows, books, like her blankets are mini, you know, stuff like that. And it's just and a lot of that is from people just buying that stuff for her.
Right.
But I know a little bit about Disney. And stuff that's going on and stuff that they've been caught up in and
the innuendo and all of this kind of
shown to be doing and I guess we'll just keep going down this route because it was a topic I kind of want to get into with you. Conspiracy theories. So you know, again, that whole thing of like I started on with dumbing down children's media, so I'll go there for a second. You know, my daughter, like, you know, she at right when she turned 2, or maybe a little before, my sister started teaching her some sign language with colors and stuff, and she actually knows now like probably 15 or 20 different signs.
Oh wow!
And so, but to me, that was just an example of why have we, you know, put like 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds in this box where it's like, oh no, they can only watch or hear or listen to this type of stuff. You know, I'm a part of some dad groups on Facebook, and a lot of the questions are like, what kind of books can I use to get my kids introduced to the Bible? And a lot of times I just comment the Bible. You know, like I started. I'm on Psalm. I've been on Psalm 119 for like the last week, but I've started reading a chapter of Psalms every night, just straight from Psalms, to my daughter. I know that she doesn't get it. I know that she's not understanding all of the words. I know that she talks over me a lot of times, but I want her to be around it. I want her to, you know, to hear it, even if it's just subconscious in the background.
Of course.
And you know, my 3-month-old, my wife had, as she was preparing dinner the other day, had him laying on the floor in a pillow, and had like Elmo or something on. I walk in the room. I changed it to to like an Answers in Genesis video of like a part, like a part 3 of them talking about like intelligent design versus the intelligent design movement. It was like a 2.5 hour long video, and my wife's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "You don't need to listen to that garbage."
Exactly. Turn that off.
But you know, it again, I think maybe the point you were kind of getting at was like, in general, I think a lot of conservative, at least in my experience, I've noticed if I know that this person is a conservative minded person, they're the ones that don't. They're not out there like putting limits on people's growth, but they're also wanting to guide them with truth. So in other words, like we could talk about gender or if you want to, you know, sexuality, where like you were saying earlier about false, what'd you say, false love or false, where in other words the fluid mindset of gender.
Gender fluidity and all that kind of stuff.
People who celebrate that, they're saying like that's the loving route to take. Where in other words, no, it's not, because it's not guided by truth. It's not guided by how God has made us to be and our nature. And if you guide that person, as you know, you're, I'm sure, aware of all of the information and data out there that shows that the people who have had these sex changes or have gone down these routes of you know, wanting to live as a woman but they're a man and stuff like that, they're mentally messed up. Like that, it proves out that the longer they live like that, the more messed up they get as life goes on. That's not a hateful thing to say. That's actually saying it out of love, because I don't want to guide you down that path.
Well, here's the thing that's worth noting again, right? What you're saying. I think you can tell the truth in a hateful way, right?
Absolutely.
And so this is worth saying too for anybody listening. I don't believe conservatives are better people.
Exactly. Yep.
I'm gonna be honest. I don't believe Christians are better people than Muslims all the time.
Yep.
I believe Christianity is a better worldview, though.
Yep.
So you can show me the worst Christian and the best Muslim, and I would still think Christianity was a better philosophy. It's a lot of trash conservative people,
Yep.
a lot of decent liberal people, but the ideas don't change in the validity based on who lives them out. So yeah, conservative scumbags, liberal scumbags, all over the place. Sure, cool. But I don't care how many bad Christians I see. Christianity is still the better philosophy. You know what I mean? And I say philosophy, of course, to me as a believer, Christianity is the truth. But I'm just trying to make an example. And I don't want people to get it twisted. I don't say conservatives are better people, but conservatism is a better ideology than liberalism to me.
Yeah. Yeah. In general, that's the point.
Right.
That's the point I think we're making.
Right.
So one guy that I like a lot, just as a side note to everything we were talking about, especially when it comes to raising kids. Do you know Vodi Bakum?
Oh yeah. Vodi's no joke. Yeah.
Yeah. Like again, I come from a homeschool background, but as my wife and I have already had talks a lot about how we're gonna raise our kids, and we're open to, like, even no matter how we start, public school, private school, homeschool, like, doesn't mean that the next year or even during that year we can't change it.
Right, for sure.
But at the same time, we've, again, I'm falling back to how I started. We're going to start with homeschooling.
That's good.
And like, one thing Vodi said that really stuck out to me was why, as Christians, we're so, we see so many church people worried about the youth, and why are they leaving the church when they when they leave youth group and stuff like that? Why are so many kids not coming back and stuff like that? And Vodi said, like, one of the hugest reasons for that is if their whole life as a child growing up, all throughout all of the different schools, if you send them away to Caesar, why are you surprised they come back as a Roman?
One of the most powerful quotes, man.
Yeah.
True story.
Yeah. And I know Christians who I've had these talks who highly disagree with me. But that's okay. There's, like you said, there's good people with bad ideas.
Disagreement is not disrespect. There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. And there are horrible people who still are right. Like, he could be a jerk and still be telling the truth. Yeah. So I would say evaluate ideas on the merit of the idea itself, not on who's saying it. A broken clock is right twice a day. It's a cliche, but most cliches are cliches because of how true they are. That's why people come to use them so commonly. Right? People use them, misabuse them, but cliches have their place because they ring so true. Right? Yeah. Like a lot of horrible people in other worldviews, other persuasions, they say true things. So truth's paramount. That's part of my Christian identity, to seek the truth. Like, what is real? What is actual? What represents reality? And that's my pursuit.
Yeah. Yeah. So how are you, we're kind of jumping back a little bit. How are you currently, George Floyd stuff? How are you processing?
George Floyd was murdered by fascist swine. Right? It's a status problem, right? It may be a racial problem, but I believe it's also, again, the libertarian philosophy. The state itself has too much power. There's no accountability in policing, period, across the board. The numbers of police who are guilty of domestic violence is crazy. Go do your own due diligence. I'm not going to quote a number, and I'm not going to even go to a source. Anybody, right? And so, I think it's a tragedy. Tragedies happen every day. Let's deal with the tragedy. Let's hold the police accountable. Hopefully he will get charged. Well, he's been charged with third-degree murder. They're still developing. Hopefully the other three or four will go down, because if I commit a murder, even if you stand there and don't do anything, you are guilty by association. So I think they all should be in jail. And that's kind of that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And yeah, and again, we've covered this already, but I agree with you. And I haven't seen anybody out there who has basically disagreed with anything that you just said. No matter
right.
where
I haven't seen anybody on any side of any ideology like defend this guy's actions.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, going back to the lumping everything together situation, when it comes to like the Ahmaud Arbery case, to me, when I process that a little bit differently. I start with, I hate that this guy lost his life. Absolutely. It shouldn't have happened. It didn't need to happen. But as we've seen a lot of evidence and stuff and just different things come out, honestly, and I'm not saying I agree with this, but I would not be surprised if these two guys don't get charged with a whole lot, because of X, Y, and Z. Whereas like George Floyd to me is like just clear cut. That's is what it is.
Right.
But again, it's they're all just lumped in as the same. And I think it was LeBron James, puts out there, like, and I could be wrong, but basically puts out there, we can't even go outside. They're shooting us.
Right. It's something like we can't even go for a jog or something like that. He said.
And that, like, I understand. I'm trying to feel with the pain of where that's coming from. But it's just not true though.
Right. Right. So here are my thoughts on Ahmaud Arbery. For me, here's what I said on because we have a political podcast that's under the umbrella of Grow the Heck Up. It's called Right Hook, Left Jaw. It's the hat I'm wearing for those of you.
I've listened to every episode.
Oh, appreciate you. So, right, I said, well, if these guys had Nazi flags in their basement, I would not be surprised. And if Ahmaud Arbery was actually caught and seen doing a crime, I would not be surprised. Right. Not because of racism or crime, but because that's just how life is, right? Like, you don't know until you know. I've seen cases where a person is a black man. It looks so clear cut. Like the guy I'm here in Houston, little girl gets shot, white guy, red hat, run away. I guess I'm not really like the hashtag king anyway. Like, oh my gosh, like bring back our girl, stop Coney, whatever these new hashtags are, right? But to me, it was like, oh wow, this dude probably turns out it was gangbangers, right? And I was like, oh, I'm caught out there, right? Like, and so I wouldn't be surprised either way when it's not clear. Now that I'm more inclined to think that those guys are responsible for his death and murdered him. Not because if manslaughter at the least, because I looked up when I started to look up citizens arrest laws, they differed by state to state. Yeah. But as I've looked at the citizens arrest law, as I looked at, there was no property in hand. You had no proof that he was the guy on the camera. More evidence has come out that you see people walking in and out of the property all the time. You see kids walking in and out. You see white couples walking in and out. Now, for me, as a real estate agent, some of my black and white friends say, I walk in home developments all the time. I don't. That's trespassing to me. I don't do that, but okay. I think that if they would have seen him committing a felony, not a trespass coming out of a house with nothing in his hand, I think that would have been more legitimate. But the fact that he comes out and starts running, it does say that, to me, that does can communicate guilt. Does it communicate jumping in your car and chasing them down with your weapons drawn? Now, the weapons drawn thing, again, like, it's an open carry state. I take my gun to the playground. I take my gun to Walmart. I take my gun to my lawn. So with the guns is not it. If you're going to confront somebody, why wouldn't you take your gun if you're a two-way person? So yeah, but here's, even as I'm talking to you, I'm thinking out loud. I'm saying, yeah, that's the difference with this case. It's not clear cut. There are more variables to consider, more things we got to see and understand about who these guys were, right? Like, okay, what's this guy's name? The guy who killed George, we don't even need to say his name. The police officer who murdered George Floyd. His background doesn't matter because he's standing there. The guy's subdued, his foot, saying he can't breathe. The threat is neutralized. Even as a first responder, as a police officer, you can't just let somebody bleed out. You got to call for a medic. So you are responsible for the person in your custody. To me, it matters less who he was because what he did is clear.
Yeah.
Now, with this other case with Ahmaud Arbery, we do need to know a little bit more. Like what's going on here? Like, what did they know? Like, have they seen him before? That did what do you call it? Did the owner of the home who was catching people on the camera ever show that to them, right? So it doesn't mean they're necessarily guilty or innocent, but I just think it's an example of how you can't lump them together. They're clearly not the same. Now, if it turns out that they're like straight white supremacist Nazis, I wouldn't be surprised because white supremacists and Nazis are real. I'm on an app called Telegram, and there are a lot of Nazis on there, like real Nazis, And I look at that content every day, so I know that's real, but I also know that, hey, everything's not as clear cut if you don't have evidence and proof.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I want to approach this? Conspiracy theories. Now you probably are aware or have seen a lot of Christian content come out, especially related to the virus. Sometimes I forget that we're even still in all that.
Right.
Related to the virus, and there's a whole bunch of stuff out about that. Now the obviously with Trump, there's always something.
Always.
So how do you deal with quote unquote conspiracy theories, and approach them and because there's always going to be a documentary about something.
Always somebody exposing something.
Everybody exposing something. Documentaries typically have an agenda, and it just so happens to be that when they're exposing something, it goes completely against a whole side.
Right.
So there's a lot of that right now. As Christians, we're dealing with all this stuff. We're seeing this stuff. A lot of Christians, I'm getting, I don't ever answer these, but I get messages from people all the time. Like, basically, it's the end of America. It's the end of the world if Trump doesn't get elected,
right.
And all these different prophetic words and all these different documentaries that are showing this and that and vaccines and Bill Gates and, all this stuff.
Yeah.
So how do you, again, as somebody who's very up on what's happening, and just a thinker and how you process things, how do you work with what is so-called conspiracy theories?
Well, I think that's a dope question. Friends help a lot, right? Like, I have a digital circle, and in this day and age, man, like, some of the best people you're going to meet, you're going to find online. Like, most of the closest people to me in my real life, I met a lot of them online. And so having people to work through things with who are not just hive-minded, like, I'll post a statistic and then my man Jimmy JSLA, he'll be like, I don't know about that because this, right? So reasoning together with other people, excuse me, behind quote unquote the scenes, and not necessarily working that out on your Facebook wall. Yeah. Because you do look crazy, right? Because there are so many theories and so much information, and then so many disclaimers that you got to give every time you share something. I think having healthy relationships with people who share those interests that you can discuss and bounce things off of, and they're interested in those things as well, going back and forth, that helps me a lot. And then the other side of that, as a Christian, I exercise public prudence. If you're my man and me and you, we getting along famously right now. If we talk tomorrow, I might shoot you something crazy. Like, yo, bro, check this out. What you think? Right? Like, I feel like I can do that in private. Yeah. Right? Because we're just reasoning and learning and growing and seeking, and we're on some kind of journey. But as believers, I think we need to be careful about what we propagate publicly, especially when a lot of this conspiracies all have people behind them. So if you say someone is a killer or a rapist or a child molester or whatever like that, if you happen to be wrong, you're slandering that person. And slander does, according to the Christian worldview, slander does not cease to be slander just because it's a famous person. So if you say all the Kardashians got arm jobs, right? They all had plastic surgery on their arms.
Yeah.
Right. If that's false, that's slander. Right.
Yeah.
Like just because they're famous and we have a gossip industry doesn't mean that God has changed how he feels about gossip. So the first thing to do as a Christian is to be prudent about how you discuss other people's characters and reputation, even when it's a celebrity. Right. Like discuss celebrities with the same, with the same carefulness that you might discuss your boss on social media. Right. Like there's a carefulness there where you're like, let me think about that. So I think that helps. And then better to be late than hasty. Right. Better to do all the research. And then, people have been telling me about this for a year. Now I finally get it. Right. And if you can validate it, go for it, rather than to always be the person like people will post something on their public Facebook wall and tag me and then say, what do you think about this? I'm like, well, I think you should have figured out what you thought about it before you posted it, bro. This is like a weighty accusation. You're saying this, that, or the third. And so I think that prudence of a Christian of being slow to speak, quote unquote, and quick to listen. The Bible says that was my Ahmaud Arbery thing. He who answers a matter before he hears it, it's folly and shame to him. And I don't want to be foolish and I don't want to be shameful. So I'd rather be careful and not post it if I can't validate it and prove it and give you a paper trail. Or if it's that important, I'll put a disclaimer and I'll say, well, I'm not sure how valid this is, but this was an interesting perspective, so to speak, right? I just try to handle people's reputations carefully because the Bible says a good name is better than silver, and you can't buy a good name. So yes, even though this is like a famous person, whether politician, millionaire, whomever, I want to be careful about how I carry people's names and reputation because I believe the Lord is going to hold me accountable on the last day. He says, for every idle word you speak, you will give an account of on the day of judgment. And so as a Christian, we really should consider how we discuss these things.
Yeah, no, that's good. What's something you said to not be to not speak with haste, which modern day we translate to, don't post with haste.
Right.
From a white guy perspective, what I'm seeing a lot of, and I'm seeing this from a lot of, I'm friends with, and in like I'm heavy a part of like the Track Stars group, and those guys and stuff like this.
Right.
So
shout out to Track Stars.
Yeah, definitely. I'm heavy involved in all that, so I'm friends with a lot of Christian rappers and stuff like that. And one thing
Christian rappers, I call them the Christian rap left, man.
Yeah,
we'll talk about that after.
Too many Christian rappers with liberal ideology.
Oh, but I forgot. Yeah,
So
yeah.
So, so what I'm getting at is from the I'm seeing a lot of what they're putting out there, and these are coming from a lot of white guys too, white rappers. I'm being told. So we have what you just said, what the Bible says, don't speak with haste and quick to listen and things like that. Try to gather information, be prudent. And then I'm being told by so many people, if me as a white guy is not immediately speaking up about issues like this, then I'm being silent and complicit with what is happening. How do I deal with that?
Ooh, the Christian rap left is not going to like me if they listen to this because no kidding, I didn't know that this was what we would be talking about. I literally just got off of Instagram speaking about this. And anybody listening, hit me up on Instagram. That's our main platform. Grow the heck up on Instagram. What I say is that I'm cool with challenging people to be empathetic and speak up. But I also think it's like mad self-righteous because there's about 100 things in America that you're not you, But whoever would challenge you to say you're not speaking up about racism, I got 100 things that they're not speaking up about. What are you doing for Somalian refugees on American soil? Homeless veterans commit 17 suicides per day. What are you doing for them? You're not speaking up. What's wrong with you? Don't you care? It's just so self-righteous. Like, so I'm cool with challenging someone of why they need to be empathetic, why they need to care, why they need to be burdened. But this attitude that because you are not burdened for something in the way that I am, that you are hateful, not a good Christian or whatever have you, I just think that that's rubbish. And I think, again, like I said, with anything, it's self-righteous. My idea of ministry is to help people understand why it's important. So if you feel like white Christians should be doing more, approach it the same way as everything. I'm passionate about education and young people. Most people I encounter don't care like that. And I could easily use that to start to browbeat them for what they're not doing. I took kids to Google. What did you do? Right. But I'm like, no, like, this is so exciting. You'd be surprised how you can open up kids' worlds to education. And so I'm more of the mindset that says I'm going to help you understand why, because Malcolm X said, don't judge a man. Don't be so quick to judge a man for what he doesn't know, because you didn't always know everything you know now. And so I think that a lot of believers that I see who take that attitude, why aren't you saying anything? I just think it's just, I do believe that there are some people who see what's going on and maybe they're callous in their hearts and they just quote unquote don't care. But again, can that be applied to the soup kitchens? Because all of the numbers are scary. The homeless numbers are scary. The suicide numbers are scary. The abortion numbers are scary. The child abuse numbers, you know what I mean? Like the sex trafficking numbers are scary. So if you're my friend on Facebook and I start posting sex trafficking statistics every day, how it relates to the porn industry and all of this kind of stuff, if you don't speak up on that, do I have the right to judge that? Why does everybody only do that for the race thing? There's a bunch of stuff that a bunch of us don't care about. A bunch of us don't care about, and we need to, I believe, come together and reason with one another and help each other understand why things are important, rather than browbeating and trying to bring guilt and shame on each other for that.
Now, everything you just said, I 100% agree with, and that basically is my mentality and how I'm thinking about those things. I've also been told that as a white guy, I can't say that.
Right. Well, then that's the difference with the conservative philosophy, because I believe that there's nothing anybody can say.
Yeah.
Everyone can say everything. And I was on a call it was supposed to be like this racial reconciliation call. My brother who put it together, great guy, with some great people on the call, but there was just this arrogant attitude that if you're white, you can't talk almost, right? And I'm like, all truth has to be validated. You can't flash your degree on me and tell me that you know more than me because of that. And you can't say that because, I'll give you an example. Oh, well, you don't know what it's like because you're white. Okay, well, let me ask you, who knows more about giving birth? A woman who's had 2 kids or a 30-year veteran OBGYN? Oh, does she know more because she's a woman, or does the OBGYN know more? Right. You don't get to flash your status and virtue signal and say, oh, because I'm black. Listen, because some of the most important and powerful truths I've learned about history and race, I've learned from some white people. I've learned from white people like Tim Wise and things like that. Did I know more just because I'm black? No, that's nonsense. All truth has to be validated in real time. So all of us have to have the humility to demonstrate the validity of where we learned this. Why is it true? Why is it valid? And that's reasoning together. And you can't take it always as callousness, hatred, or racism because somebody doesn't immediately see where you're coming from. And I think in other contexts, we understand that. But just given the history and the racial trauma and so much of what actually still does go on, I think it's difficult for some people. But I just try to bring that approach to the table.
Yeah, no, that's real. And I appreciate that. And I agree with you too. Like I wouldn't limit anything that somebody could say to me, based off of anything, like based off of where they're coming from, their ideology, their skin color. Like I personally would not do that. But again, when we're talking about like, the sensitive issues of like George Floyd and stuff like that, first and foremost, as a Christian, I want to talk from that perspective. That's the main thing.
Of course.
But there is these other, heavy dynamics to it of race is involved and stuff like that. And like I was talking to, one of my black friends today,
Mm-hmm.
and I was telling him all this similar stuff I've been saying here, and he's like, yeah, but to most people you can't say that.
Right. And let me give a nod to conservatism, because I try not to. I was challenged by my brother KB, rapper KB, and Amin.
I love KB.
Me, KB, Amin, and Bizzle. We get into friendly sword fights with each other. We've been going back and forth a lot. We're in a Telegram chat together.
I would love to be a fly on the wall for all those talks.
Oh yeah,
every one of those guys you named, I love those guys. Like Southside Rabbi, his podcast, I love.
Right. Sharp brothers, and we just disagree fundamentally on a lot, even though we both have we all have the same heart for things.
Yeah.
And so I brought that up for a reason. Here's a nod to conservatism. Oh, so KB challenged me to make sure that I'm not being too condescending when I'm talking about ideas in politics. But I'll take liberty on your podcast and say that's some snowflake social justice warrior stuff. You can't talk if you're not gay. If you're not a woman, man, I say whatever I want, homie. Are you crazy? Now this is where, now we want to get into like race baiting. I'm from the projects, homie. You're not telling me what to say, right? Like that's not the energy I bring, because I don't care if you can say it. Right? I can disagree. That's equality. When I start to say that you can't because that to me is like a revenge holdover. Like until there's equality, I want to take some natural God-given right away from you. No, you can say whatever you want. I can say whatever I want, as long as I'm not infringing upon your property and upon your liberty. I want to hear what people think. I want to understand how people arrived at their conclusion. I welcome all pushback, all doubt, all skepticism, because I want the truth of what I'm saying to stand. And that, to me, again, this is just what I've observed. I could be wrong. Both sides of everything generally do everything, but the philosophy lends itself more to freedom. You are free to say what you want, and I am free to disagree. It is a liberal philosophy, because it's only one ideology that wants people canceled and deplatformed for their words. And a lot of Christians who I see jumping on this wave, I just can't even understand it, because what makes them think that they're not next? What makes them think that the Bible's not about to be hate speech? So that's a dangerous philosophy for all, right? Like, so no, I don't agree with the Nazis, but then see. This is why the conservative philosophy appeals to me. I want the freedom to say what I want, so I'm going to allow you the freedom to say what you want.
So I just give you a quick story, but it relates to exactly what you just said. A recent story. I don't know if you saw anything on the news about a gym in Belmar that was opening against the governor's orders.
Yes. And then a couple of gyms started following suit, correct?
Yeah. So the first one, the main one, that's actually 15 minutes from me.
Interesting.
And so
America.
This is funny. So the day that it was opening, it was a big thing. My wife and I, we were out and we were grocery shopping or something, and we were down the street from it. So I said, you know what? I'm not gonna get out or anything, but I want to just go to the parking lot and see what's going on.
Right.
And so we go in. It's crowded. Like there's a big crowd of people. Nothing crazy was happening. It was just a lot of people, a lot of news and stuff. So I take a Snapchat video, and I'm like, I'm saying like, here we're at the gym. Like I'm saying we got news vans. It's like and I was like, in the name of freedom, and so I posted. So one of the guys I work with, his daughter, she follows me, and she saw the video and had told him that she didn't like it. She's pretty left leaning with stuff.
Right. She don't like freedom. I get it.
And so my response to him was, that's okay. I want her to have the freedom to have a wrong opinion.
Right. No doubt. Right. You listen, if you want to stay home, stay home. I get, and here's the thing. Like, okay, two things about the coronavirus real quick. For people who are mad at people going outside, don't be mad at those people. Be mad at the sketchiness of the hospitals and the media who will keep giving these people conflicting information. Because when doctors and nurses are coming on the news and putting I don't trust anonymous accounts. You see these anonymous letters over the years about the music industry. I don't trust any of those. But when someone in a professional capacity is willing to put their name, face, and reputation on the line and say, hey, nobody's dying here, they're lying. I know a brother who's a Christian rapper who is in a hospital in New York, and he's telling us, yo, people are not being diagnosed with COVID. The tests are coming back positive one week and then negative the next week. From the Christian hip hop community said he and his wife both lost grandparents, both were diagnosed with COVID, both were false. So I won't say COVID is false, but I think that those of us who are skeptical, if someone's mad at that, then you need to be mad at the people who are giving us conflicting information, and we need to get that straight first. So yeah.
And
freedom.
see,
and then also,
yeah,
even beyond that, now we're at a point where we're past quote unquote skepticism. We know. I think ABC or NBC came out today and said 21 of the states that opened early since May 4th, it started to enter, Trump put out phases. Phase one, those that opened up on May 4th, 21 states have seen no escalation in coronavirus deaths. So what's up? Right? Are those of you who were afraid and snowflakey about it, are you gonna now take that back? So I'm just saying, like, okay, we can disagree, but once the evidence bears out, that's just what it is.
And you know what? Again, I agree with everything you just said. But a lot of that, to most people that I've had these conversations with about this, the way that most people think of everything you just said, oh, that's just that's just some conspiracy stuff. Like I don't, I'm not really buying into all that. And at least the point that I try to get across is we can lay everything out on the table. Me, just as a reasonable person looking at all of this, I'm not saying it's fake. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm not saying people are actually dying from it. But I think this point is undeniable. There are just way too many questions about what is happening that I'm not gonna live in that fear mindset and have that just direct my whole existence.
Well, listen, here's what I tell you. My body, my choice. Right? That's what they say for abortion, right? My body, my choice, except for this is actually my body. And then someone says, well, but it's affecting another body. Oh, you don't say. So I'm just saying, of course, that's a little joke and a little jab at the liberal ideology of abortion, but this is what it is, right? We dealing with what we're dealing with. The news media gets caught lying. And that's another thing. When people say conspiracy stuff, I like to drill down into that. I want to show you at least 3 videos. 2 doctors in California, 1 nurse here in New York. Who else? Then 1 doctor that was like in Minnesota or somewhere like that. And then also 2 personal testimonies. And so what's conspiratorial about these people who you got to understand, we're not talking anonymous accounts with the voiceovers. We're talking doctors and nurses putting their name and reputation on a line. And hospitals are getting money for COVID diagnoses. Now, it very well could be foolish to doubt the veracity of the coronavirus, but I don't think you can blame that on those who doubt. I think you would have to lay that blame on those who are playing with us with the information that they're disseminating. And the doubt and the skepticism is warranted at the very least.
100%. It's again, with all that stuff laid out, it definitely is warranted to be skeptical of what we're being told.
Right.
Like I've told people in the very beginning, maybe 2-3 weeks shut down because we just don't have info yet. We just don't know. We're being told this thing is out here, but we just don't know. Then as stuff starts coming in, we don't destroy everything around us, economy wise and businesses and people's livelihoods. We don't destroy all of that for what? Right. For yes, this disease or virus that does exist, but it's to me it's sort of similar to LeBron James telling black people we can't walk out our front door.
Right. We can't go jogging. Right.
Yeah. It's there's so many people, again,
I just got to keep it real. I know that sometimes people don't like me having these conversations in front of certain other ethnicities, but when I was growing up, if I couldn't jog, it wasn't the police I was worried about. And we'll just leave that there and keep talking.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, no doubt.
There was the thing you said earlier of you want me to feel bad about this issue right now. Yes, I do empathize. I do hate that it happened.
Right.
But why do you not hate that this and this and this and this and this and this are always happening?
Right, for sure.
Why was there 10 killings in Chicago Memorial Weekend?
I think I got better numbers than you. 3 killings, 30 shot though.
Because the last one I saw was 40 shot and 10 kills.
Oh, okay, you might have got better data than me. See, there we go. Either way, it's the same kind of stuff. Like, yeah, man, to certain people don't like the whataboutism. Like when somebody brings up something and you say like, what about this? But to me, I'm cool with that because I like to put to the test how consistent this is.
Yeah.
Is this just a bias you have? Or is this something you care about through and through? Being a person who grew up in the projects, I always like to, especially from a Christian context, I always like to say, if you hate sagging pants, but you're cool with breast cleavage, then that's a cultural bias, not a righteous standard. Ooh. Right? And I think that asking questions like that, they allow people to see whether or not you are consistent. So if I tell you I'm voting for Trump and you ask me, what do I think of Obama or Hillary? I'm going to answer you. I'm not going to say that doesn't have anything to do with it. Why? Because I'm eager to demonstrate the consistency in my standard, right? Like I'm eager to show you like, yeah, ask me about it. Sure. I'll demonstrate. I'll tell you what I believe because I want to be consistent. Now I know that some people use whataboutism to deflect. I'm aware of that, but I don't get into all of that. You present that to me, I'm going to give you an account of it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So if you said in the very beginning, you said I'm conservative, or this might have been we were talking earlier, but I'll throw you out there. You said sure. You're a Trump supporter.
2020 gang on the gang. Christian rappers know what time it is. They know who. I am.
You out here wearing the MAGA hat though?
Nah, no MAGA hat, not yet.
Okay, not yet.
To be honest with you, if I put a MAGA hat on, it's because I just really want to. I don't want to be. It's not that I want violence, but we've seen some. Well, how can I word this? We've seen some real questionable things at Trump rallies early on. 2 or 3 things happened to Trump protesters. It looked like, well, what's going on with these people? Are they racist? Are they just beating up black people? Cool. All right, cool. That's worthy. Yeah. I think that's valid. It's a valid inquiry to make, right? But since then, though, there are about 20, 30 cases of people getting beat up with MAGA hats on, though, right? Like milkshakes poured on them, smacked around. Rappers, there's one rapper, I forget his name, from California. He ran up on a Trump protest threatening to beat people up and all that. So if I put on a MAGA hat, I just want to see if that energy is the same because it's never like hood black people who support Trump that get ran up on. So I'll just leave that there. Just saying.
I know somebody out there that's like that is King Face.
Yeah, I'm cool with King Face. Yeah, shout out to King Face. King Face is a wild boy. Yeah.
I've seen some of his stuff. I don't follow him, all the time, but But yeah, he's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like I was telling you earlier, I own that Etsy shop selling political merch, and
right.
I've always had this internal battle with myself. Can I actually wear any of my own stuff?
Right. No doubt. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because no MAGA hat. Definitely voting for Trump. I was anti-Trump. I was making anti-Trump videos. And for those who don't know my background or whatever, I was making racial videos about race and racism before it was even cool in Christian hip hop, right? Mm-hmm. When, with all due respect, if you're in Christian hip hop, then I'm telling the truth, or either you go research it and you find it's the truth. When all the well-known Christian rappers were saying nothing about race, I was very vocal, Bizzle and I. And so I believe I've earned the right of credibility to say, hey, I may be wrong, but I've always been true to whatever it is that I believe. It's not a stunt. It's just, I'm aligned with Wherever my values and the truth lead me, I'll go. So with Trump, though, I was very anti-Trump because Trump did a lot of things that brought skepticism, doubt, and suspicion of his ideology about racism on himself. I admit that readily. A lot of things he said and did, a lot of bluster, just looked very suspect. But as the presidency began and continued, I started to catch mainstream media in line. That's a huge red flag to me. Kind of like the cop who plants drugs on the drug dealer. It's like, okay, well, maybe he's a drug dealer, but what's going on with you planting drugs on this guy, right? Like, it's that kind of thing. So it didn't start off like, oh, they're out to get him, poor Trump. It started to be like, wait a minute, that's not true. Why'd they say that, right? And I'm like, if a guy's a bad guy, you don't got to throw flame, you don't got to throw salt on it. It's what it is. And so the lies about Trump begin to make me not support Trump, but to say, okay, they're playing with me. I'm a black man, and they're trying to use my race to get me to do something. And so the more I started to dig, the more I started to peel back false narratives. I had an argument with I had a Twitter exchange with Derek Minor in like 2018 or 2019, where he said, Nazis and white supremacists were very fine people. I said, no, it's fake news. I believed that myself for a year. Let me I think this is a worthy breakdown. You didn't ask me about this, but let me help people understand the truth about what happened that day. And here's the thing. I may tell you what I believe. No, I'm going to tell you the truth. You may still have your opinion, but these are little known facts. I asked people, I had a conversation with a pastor who thought Trump was racist. And I asked him if he knew who Antifa was. He said no. I said, if you don't know who Antifa was, there's no way you can properly judge what Trump said. You may still disagree after, but there were 4 groups at the Charlotte protest, not 2. There were the pro-Confederate statue people. There were the anti-Confederate statue people. There were the white Nazis and the white supremacists there to support the Confederate people. And there were the violent thugs, Antifa, which is a white gang. You talk about privilege. White gang runs around liberal cities with masks, bats, and chains and intimidates people. Yeah, there were good and bad people on both sides. That is the truth. Now, whether or not you think the Confederate supporting people can be good people, that's a different conversation. But what Trump said was absolutely accurate. There were 4 groups of people at the Charlotte protest, not 2. Yeah. For starters.
And no, I mean, again, you say things about Trump. It always seems, to kind of cover yourself, you always have to throw out a disclaimer like, he tweets some dumb stuff. Yeah, he says some dumb things. But at the same time, so much of what we heard as these absolutely horrible racist or homophobic or whatever type of things that he said, like a lot of that stuff is just taken way out of context, exaggerated or straight lies. Yeah, exactly. And I don't consider myself as somebody like I'm not on the Trump train right now.
Right, no doubt. Let me say something else, bro, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
For the Christian rap audience as well. Right? This self-righteousness that you don't like Trump, but you stand with Stacey Abrams, AOC, Bernie Sanders, and all these pro-drag queen story time.
Talk about D1 real quick. Go ahead.
Right, like what type of listen, I don't think that you're not a Christian because you vote Democrat. Yeah. I definitely want to ask what you feel about some of the agendas on the platform. So I think a lot of the criticism about Trump support, you can still disagree, but they're disagreeing while they're standing next to the baby killers. And they think that they have some type of moral ground to stand on. You don't, fam. You don't. You're standing with baby killers and people who support drag queen storytime and all type of anti-God rhetoric and things like that. Bernie Sanders said there's no such thing as a pro-life Democrat. Those are his words. And that's not fake news when you Google that. When I tell you something, you're going to Google it and find it, right? I'm not saying you're not a Christian because you vote for Bernie. I'm saying you don't have the moral ground you think you do standing next to these liberal leftist politicians who support all kind of ungodly things, right? And so that's my thing. You don't got to like Trump. You don't got to believe he's good. You don't got to vote for him. You can still dislike him. But I just don't think that, a lot of these Christian rappers who support Stacey Abrams from Georgia, she is Planned Parenthood's #1 candidate, right? Planned Parenthood is a racist agency. From its inception, they said Stacey Abrams was their #1, like they were the #1 backer of this woman. Christian rappers supporting and tweeting Stacey Abrams. You think you hot? You think you got some moral ground to stand on? I think you need to pump your brakes a little, because I'm not going to say you're not a Christian. So you need to like ease up with that. And here's the point I make. Trump does a lot of righteous things with ignorant, foolish bluster. Mm. The left does a lot of unrighteous things with upstanding charisma and dignity and soft-spokenness. You want to put drag queens in kindergarten? You are wicked, fam. I don't care how nicely you talk. So, but then the guy over here, so Obama, listen, I voted for Obama first time. Obama put girls in the boys' bathroom and boys in the girls' bathroom. He used Title IX from the 1960s to threaten to withhold funding from schools if they didn't comply. Who takes the boys out the girls' bathroom, and who takes the girls out the boys' bathroom, and vice versa? The Trump administration. So yeah, with all that bluster, that's a good thing. So I'm just saying, like, my scales might be a little different, but like I said, I just wanted to give an account for some of that. That people think that because someone doesn't have as much of a what do you call arrogant, even dare I say narcissistic demeanor in the way they communicate, that they're standing next to all of these politicians who represent all manner of other kinds of wickedness. I don't think you have the righteous ground to stand on that you think you do in a lot of these cases. So yeah, that's my message to the Christian rap left, as I call them.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and so one thing I heard an apologist that I listened to say when he was talking about voting for a president and stuff like that, he said I'm saying this and I want to get your feedback on this quote.
Sure.
He said when you vote, you're not voting for a pastor, you're voting for a president. You're in other words, but he took it one step further and he said, you're not voting for a pastor, you're voting for policy.
Right.
So line it up on the table from your vantage point and your worldview. Who do you think represents the best policies?
I think Trump absolutely has the best policies, but I also think that I don't know about that apologist's history, but the little that I do know of political history, that's new, because Republicans and the moral majority were all about character when it was Bill Clinton. That's the hypocrisy in the Republican Party.
You're right. I mean, it goes both ways. Yeah.
Right. Like, that's the hypocrisy. That wasn't the case before. Right. So yeah, I would say Trump has better policy, but I think all of that, like, we're not voting for a pass. I'm younger, so I'm just now getting into the fray, so I don't have to account for my votes from 20, 30 years ago. But a lot of these Republicans who crucified Bill Clinton, a lot of these evangelicals who crucified Bill Clinton and talked about the sanctity and the sacredness of the office, you need to repent for your hypocrisy. If you've changed your mind, cool, but that's straight hypocrisy from Republicans. That's my take on that. Just to, keep it even and fair.
I got you. Okay, so I think the stark difference that we see with Obama and Trump exactly represents everything you were just saying. Obama did a lot of shady things and even just bad things from a Christian worldview standpoint. Policy wise, did a lot of bad stuff, but he was a great sounding dude. Like I don't think there's one person out there that wouldn't want to have a lunch with him. Like
probably carried himself with more dignity than more than almost any politician in history, probably.
And but then you have Trump, stark difference, carries himself the whole opposite of Obama. In a very harsh way, calls people out immediately on stuff that he disagrees with or he thinks is garbage.
Berates people, calls people names. He chilled out on the name calling, though. I've been watching Trump for a while. Yeah, he's gotten more seasoned, but yeah, he's still full of
But again, from a Christian, worldview standpoint, policy-wise, he's definitely done a lot of better things, I think, overall than Obama had put in place. Now that brought to my mind, though, again, as a Christian, we're not looking at politics and the government as our savior. We're not to do that. So how do you align we want the Christian morals are the best. We know that. We know that. But the downside of going to the extreme moralistic side is that you have a moralistic culture now that, yes, they might have good morals overall, but now they think they're okay. They think they don't need a savior. They think, so it's kind of keeping all that in check. It's a whole view. It's the whole thing of making sure that, yes, we do want those morals to be prevalent, but everybody is still wretched in their sins and needs a savior.
For sure, 100%, without question.
And the government can't save us through pushing good morals.
Right. But the government can hinder us through wicked and oppressive laws. That is true. Right. The government can't fix culture, but they can sure contribute to culture's demise. And so for me, I really, the concept of freedom, believe it or not, is relatively new to me to the past couple of years. I always thought, like, I want to be free, I am free, whatever it is, or I'm not free or whatever. But this is a pluralistic society. And so this is why, and sometimes, this is just me personally, I don't think anybody, that's another thing too, like, I'm not the you need to vote for this person type of guy. I'm the let me give an account to you for why I'm voting kind of guy. And then to be honest, like, because politics is not my savior, I almost don't care who you vote for, to be honest. Like, I trust God's sovereignty. But in the context of public discourse and dialogue, I insert myself into the conversation because it's almost like conservative is the superhero cape I put on to discuss social issues outside of the context of religion. And the freedom piece is so important to me because I'm careful. The government can't accomplish the level of morality that I want. And then what really do I want? Do I want America to try to be a theocracy? No. I don't want the Bible taught in schools, because I don't want a liberal secularist teaching scripture. But do I want my kids to be free to pray and read the Bible in school? Yeah, sure. I'm with that. Trump and Ted Cruz sat down and signed legislation to co-sign that. Well, no, Trump by himself. Trump and Ted Cruz sat down for school choice and school vouchers, pardon me. So yeah, the liberty and freedom piece is very important to me because the society is pluralistic. So I don't vote to make the society Christian as much as I do vote to ensure that I can be Christian, because I'm the light. I don't want the government to be the light. I just don't want policies that hinder me from being the light. And I know that the men will wax worse. But that's what, and just speaking for myself, somebody just commented on my Instagram and said Trump's leadership is trash. So I got to answer that when I'm done. This is what I do. I forgot what I was saying. I took my train of thought. It's a Christian rapper. It's my friend, but it is what it is. Yes. So yeah, the freedom piece is important to me. The liberty to live out my values is important. So I have two Christian friends who are rappers. Some of you may even know them, but I don't think it's relevant right now. They both call themselves socialists and communists, and they're right. And I have other Christian friends who call themselves like Hebrew Israelites, even though they believe Jesus Christ is the Messiah and don't embrace all of the stuff you might have heard from them. So my real life circle is diverse. I don't know how people are living. I don't know if they live in conservative silos or liberal silos. My personal life is genuinely diverse. And so I don't exalt what I believe about politics or conservatism to a point where it causes rifts or divides with me. Because I'm cool. I don't need you to vote any kind of way, but I'm always willing to give an account for why I vote the way I do. Yes. Okay. So racism is real, right? I need my strap, right? Racism is real. We need our guns, right? The government is oppressive. You can't trust them. They hate black people, right? We need our guns, right? That's a conservative philosophy, which again lends itself to freedom. Okay, so you believe the criminal justice. See, that's another thing too with this liberal stuff. So many of the policies that they stand for seem to be against the people that they say they want to help. Okay, so the government is oppressive. You want gun control? You believe that police departments are corrupt across the country and you want stricter gun control? You think they're kicking down suburb doors first or project doors first?
Yeah.
Right. I grew up in an area where there was high crime. No way to protect myself, neither could my family. Then when I became a criminal, I had all the access I wanted to guns. Could get a gun in 20 minutes, right? But as a legal law-abiding citizen, I could get a gun never. So yeah, that freedom piece is important to me to be able to protect my life and my liberty, and I want people to be free. But this is where the Constitution and secular government fall short, because the same free speech that allows me to say Jesus is Lord is the same free speech that allows somebody to support porn. So I'm fully aware that the Constitution falls short of being a religious document. I only take it for what it is, a political document to govern a secular society.
Exactly. Yeah, bro. It's you say a lot better everything that's in my head.
Oh, praise God, bro. I appreciate you having me on.
I don't know how you do it. I would suggest one recommendation I would have. I know you'd enjoy something like this if you haven't already read it. It's by Dr. Michael Brown, Jezebel's War with America.
Okay.
Jezebel's War with America, the plot to destroy our country and what we can do to turn the tide.
Right.
Came out last year. Because there's a spiritual war going on too, right? You know what I mean?
For sure.
That's everywhere. And he just does a great job in that book, kind of addressing that side of things of what's going on in society. I'm just saying that because I know you'd enjoy it.
Yeah, no doubt. Michael Brown's what's up.
So
shout out to Hazakim too, my fellow conservatives in Christian hip hop. It's not many of us.
Yeah. So okay. We'll wrap it up because I know we're actually at like 2 hours. I don't put a time limit on my interviews and stuff, but I also know that there reaches a point where people just stop listening.
Right, for sure.
So
like what Joe Rogan status right now.
Yeah, what I wanted to do and listen, I could go for another 4 hours. Like there's so much I want to talk to you about.
Right.
But
maybe I'll come back sometime, bro.
Yeah, definitely. I want to do a little rapid fire session. So
okay.
I got a few different things.
Sure.
What right now? What people that are listening? What do you want to say to Black Christians?
Ooh, what do I want to say to Black Christians? Boom. Disagreement is not disrespect. And this idea of kicking people out of the race and not inviting people to the barbecue that's so fun and cute that people play with, that's not rooted in anything healthy in Black history. Malcolm and Martin disagreed. As a matter of fact, Malcolm X went as far as to say Martin Luther King was an Uncle Tom. W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington disagreed on what the way up was for Black people. There's a long history of differing philosophies in the history of Black culture. So don't dismiss someone because they have not arrived at the same conclusion as you. Now, you may talk to them and find out you believe that they're on some bull crap, but you can't know that purely from disagreement, because all of the people that were hailed as heroes, we group them together. Oh, this person, that person, Garvey. Like a lot of them wouldn't have gotten along with each other based on their different views. So that's my message to Black Christians. Don't try to kick people out the race because they have a different view, because that's satanic and demonic.
Yeah. Cancel culture.
Cancel culture is I thought that was the rapid fire. Okay, go on. Yeah. Cancel culture. Again, another liberal type of thing where if I don't like what you say, I have to shut you down, deplatform you and all of that. Right.
Yep. Next one. What do you want to say to white Christians?
What do I want to say to white Christians? Don't let culture make you feel guilty for being white. When I grew up, I did not want to be judged by other Black people, whether I had my pants sagging by how your encounters with other Black people. If I had my pants sagging or my hat backwards and my hoodie on, I wanted my individuality. Growing up, I was not taught to grant white people that. I felt it was okay to lump them in. Oh, you white. Like I could just speak about it anyway. Like, y'all white people and all, right? I didn't have respect for white individuality. But at the same time, I wanted Black individuality, though. So, my encouragement is, if you're interested, then be humble and listen to people who say that they have a different perspective and experience as a Black person than you. Try to understand. But if you disagree, don't be shamed into being quiet, because that's not healthy either.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A couple, I guess ones that you've listened to recently that you've been liking, podcasts that you recommend.
Ooh.
Besides
I don't
yours,
listen to,
of course.
Right, besides my own. Can I do audiobooks instead of podcasts?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Black Rednecks, White Liberals by Thomas Sowell. The Diversity Delusion by Heather McDonald. The Triple Package by Amy Chua. And yeah, those three are culture and social must-reads, in my opinion.
They're going to go on my list.
Mm-hmm.
What are, that might cover it, but my next two questions were favorite recent books and favorite, so that covers that. Now,
right.
All time, give me like 2 or 3 authors that you highly suggest.
For right now, just one, Thomas Sowell.
How do you spell Sowell?
Sowell. Thomas spelled regularly.
Okay, yeah. I knew I recognized it because your Grow the Heck Up posts him a lot of his posts and stuff. Yeah.
Do yourself a favor, hop on YouTube, anybody listening, and if you haven't listened to Thomas Sowell, just listen to him. And my favorite, if not that this is what you asked, but I think it's in line with as far as like understanding where people pull their worldview from. My favorite Bible teacher is Chuck Missler. All-time favorite, no other category for me. Really shaped the way I approach the scriptures with a veracity to learn, but also a humility and an openness. He always used to say before he went on to be with the Lord, the only barrier to truth is the presumption that you have it already. Right? And even though I didn't mention that to you, you can kind of see how that has shaped my approach toward Grow the Heck Up and learning and growth. And so Chuck Missler, favorite teacher. Thomas Sowell right now, sociology-wise, probably favorite author.
Is he a Christian?
Who?
Thomas Sowell?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. Thomas Sowell is one of those guys that's filled with tremendous social wisdom, but may not be a believer.
Yeah. And that happens.
It happens.
Yeah.
It happens. Christians aren't always the best mechanics.
Yeah. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of times when I do interviews, the last thing I like to ask people is, 30 seconds or so, just it could be not even related to anything we talked about. What is just a message that you want to get across?
Do not allow society, the times, frustration to stop you from trying to legitimately engage and connect with people. Whether you disagree with them or whether they're just people that you love who've just fallen by the wayside because you've gotten busy in this digital age. We need each other. We need to really be connecting. We need to really be seeking to understand each other. We may walk away and still disagree, but don't not give it a chance because you're on some side of some idea or something like that. Reach out to people. Sometimes it's not worth it because it's the internet. But then there's some people who we might have followed or have relationships with for years that we just see them posting or doing something we don't really like. Don't let the enemy stop you from connecting with people in a real way, because it's still important. And I just believe that, especially as believers, that's how God has called us to be the church. So that's my heart. And that's why anyone listening, my DMs are always open for agreement, disagreement, encouragement, rebuke, exhortation, or whatever you want to bring. So anybody can hit me up on Grow the Heck Up on Instagram. And if I see it and time permits, I'll answer you.
Awesome. And that leads right into my last thing. Let people know how they can find you.
Grow the Heck Up on Instagram right now is the best place to follow us. Sometimes that changes, but right now Instagram is where you can get a taste of what we represent heavy. And it is a lot of politics because, like I said, a lot of subjects have been politicized. So that's like unavoidable. Almost anything I believe, even about the Bible, there's some political spin on it. that needs to be addressed in a political context as well. And so, yeah, Grow the Heck Up on Instagram is the best place to find us and connect with us. And we welcome all questions.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, sir. And growtheheckup.com, right? That's where you get
growtheheckup.com. We're more active on social right now. We're actually trying to do more articles, but we don't have as many writers as we used to have. But even that, bro, I just want to close by saying I've invited people who are liberal to blog on my platform. Right? I'm not afraid of other ideas. I don't have to agree with everything I post. There are some ideas that are valid enough to me to discuss, even when I disagree with them. So my friend who is a socialist and a communist, he was writing for Grow the Heck Up at one time. And sometimes he would say something in one of his articles that I disagreed with. But his perspective was weighty, wise, and valid enough that I felt that it deserved to be heard.
To be heard, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow. Man, there's a lot to digest in this. I appreciate you. I appreciate you for coming on, and thank you for the time.
Yeah.
And
praise God. Thank you for having me, brother.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna want to a part 2 to this.
No doubt.
Maybe even get you on with somebody else to see a little back and forth action.
Yeah, ding, ding, ding.
Yeah. This
you got to get
awesome.
up. Listen, whoever that is, you got to get up early to see me. You can't come with the fake news. You got to wake up early. Just saying. But it's not a pissing contest, man. I'm not in competition when I have discussion, brother. I'm trying to build, as they say.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, awesome. Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate you. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you for having me, bro. I really appreciate it, man. It's good to talk to you.
Awesome. All right, bro. God bless.
Peace.